Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the New Orleans Jazz Museum. This beautiful space that you're in is a partnership between the Jazz Museum and the National Park Service. I am Ranger Karen. I'm with the New Orleans Jazz National Historical Park. We're a national park that's dedicated to preserving and educating people about the origins and the development of jazz music that happened right here in the city of New Orleans. And we have a visitor center down the street at 419 Decatur Street. We do ranger talks there Tuesday through Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Saturday mornings we do a drum circle. Wednesday afternoons we do a piano hour down at our visitor center. Saturday afternoons we do a concert. So we got lots of opportunities. We also have exhibits about all the different cultures that have come together to make New Orleans special. So if you get a chance, I hope you'll come visit us down at 419 Decatur. But for today, we are here for our jazz piano hour, and you all are in for a real treat today. We have the great Joe Krown playing, and he's a real student of New Orleans piano professors. New Orleans has its own distinctive piano history, and Joe's going to play some of that music and talk to you a little bit about that. So I hope that you will welcome Joe Krown.
All right. Good to see you all. Last time I did this, we just did live streams. There were no live audiences. I know, so and I think that was only like 4 months ago, something like that. But it's great to see the audiences out here, and I appreciate everybody coming out. And we are live streaming this, so feel free to keep that in mind, I guess. Okay, as Ranger Karen had said, I am a student of the styles of the New Orleans piano professors, and what we mean by that is what I consider the architects of the New Orleans piano style, people like Professor Longhair and Dr. John and Fats Domino and all the great piano players that made that sound that we call the New Orleans piano. So I'm just going to run through my influences of piano players and kind of give you a little bit of a introduction to who they were and what they did to contribute. But they all kind of started. They all came out of the New Orleans piano players. All were students, or they were all studied in the style of boogie woogie and blues piano. So I'm going to start out with some boogie woogie, and this is one that I wrote. It's called the Magazine Street Boogie because I live off of Magazine Street. But this is how this goes. Thank you. I get a little dry after playing something like that. But anyway, that's a boogie woogie, and if you can see my hands, the left hand kind of does the boogie woogie, and the right hand plays all the melody stuff, and that's pretty consistent with all the New Orleans piano styles, where the left hand kind of keeps the rhythm and keeps the bass and all that stuff going, while the right hand plays the melody. So, what makes this different from makes the New Orleans piano style different is that it's a whole different rhythmic thing. You heard that? That wasn't me, right? Okay, I always got to ask that. But so, and the guy that really kind of made that distinction was a guy. His name was Henry Roland Bird, and they called him Professor Longhair. And he developed a style that had a more syncopated rhythm to it, which was kind of like it was influenced by Caribbean rhythms and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to give you an example of that, and we kind of call this the mambo groove. And it, instead of having a straight rhythm, it has what we call like a syncopated rhythm. And Professor Longhair did a lot of things on top of that. And I'm going to give you an example of it. This is what we call the mambo groove. And this was a very popular song, and it's very popular during all the Mardi Gras season, because it's a song about Mardi Gras called Mardi Gras in New Orleans. Thank you very much. As you can tell, that's got a lot more rhythms on top of rhythms that are going on in that versus like a straight boogie woogie, which is just this is the sound of the New Orleans piano, though. That's a pretty hard like mambo groove, and that's pretty much what has defined all the piano players that came after that. People like Dr. John and Fats Domino, and I mean Fats Domino. That all comes from Professor Longhair. So anyway, I want to do one more Professor Longhair song just because he was kind of the fork in the road that set all the other piano players aside and gave us the sound that is the New Orleans sound. This was one of his more popular songs called Tipatina. And by the way, there is a nightclub called Tipitina's, and I thought this song was always written about the nightclub, but it's not. And I saw an interview with Dr. John once who said that Professor Longhair told him that Tipatina was a bird. That's what he said. So I guess he named it after this bird. So this is how this goes. Thanks. One of my big influences was Dr. John. His real name was Mac Rebenak. And I didn't grow up in New Orleans. I grew up in the Northeast in New York. And I lived in Boston before I moved down here. I've been down here only 30 years. Believe it or not, that's not enough, to some people at least. But my first introduction to it was Dr. John, because in my age group, he was on the radio up in the north. We didn't really get Professor Longhair. I mean, we got Fats Domino, but Fats was more of like, you know, the hit maker. In fact, he was probably sold more records than any one artist to ever come out of New Orleans. And I think at one point in time, they actually, his single Blueberry Hill beat out the Beatles for a little while. So it's one of those things where, you know, when I really got into the piano thing, it was Dr. John who was really kind of my introduction to this sound. And then once that I heard Dr. John, I was like, oh, wow, this is great stuff. Someone was like, you got to hear this Professor Longhair, because that's who he really got it from. So I want to play some Dr. John tunes. This one is one of his more popular songs, and it was a song called Such a Night. And this doesn't have the mambo feel to it, but it's got kind of a stride feel. And what I mean by a stride feel, stride is something where it's called stride because you can actually see the left hand jump back and forth like this. And when you do it really fast, it's kind of impressive. There are guys like Art Tatum that would play stride, and it sounds like they're doing all in one hand, so it looks boom, 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 boom like this. And that's why they call it stride. But it's not going to be that fast, and I can't play that fast. So, but this is Dr. John, and it's Such a Night. Thank you. There's one other song I wanted to play. And Dr. John played all these, the classic New Orleans songs, all the Professor Longhair stuff. He played all the Huey Piano Smith, everything. He played it all. So when I go to play Dr. John, I want to play stuff that was exclusively a Dr. John kind of thing, because he did Tipatina and he did Mardi Gras in New Orleans and he did Rock and Pneumonia and all these other songs that were, just New Orleans standards. But Such a Night was one of the ones that is uniquely Max or Dr. John's. And another one that this is one I want to do another one of his. It's a song he wrote called Dorothy, and it's kind of a gospel-y ballad and his mother's name was Dorothy, so I'm thinking, that's probably what it's about. But anyway, this is Dorothy, and it's a real pretty song. Thanks a lot. I want to move over to another piano player who was actually a very, we were very good friends, and he wasn't so much recognized for his piano playing, although he was the maestro of all piano players, but he was recognized more for his songwriting and his producing, and that was Alan Toussaint. And Alan produced and wrote pretty much, I wouldn't say all, but a large volume of music of the hits that came out of the 60s for people like Irma Thomas and Ernie Cato, Lee Dorsey, Jesse Hill. I mean, he wrote songs for everybody, and they were almost, it was almost like a guarantee that if you got with Alan, that you would become, he would give you a hit and you become a star. And his songwriting was so prolific that people have covered his music all over, from people from like Patti LaBelle, the Grateful Dead, Paul McCartney, have all done Alan Toussaint songs. Elvis Costello was a huge fan of his. Paul Simon was a fan of his. And little did you know, kind of like Fats Domino, you don't really realize that these guys were really like phenomenal piano players. But Alan was a friend, and we talked a lot about music, and he was very inspirational to me. And so I want to play some I want to play an Alan Toussaint song. This was one of his songs that he actually had a hit with, and this was the song that he had his biggest hit with, and it was called Southern Night. And another guy named Glenn Campbell did a version of it, and it was like a mega hit for him. But this was Alan's biggest song, and he always closed his concerts with this song because it was kind of his signature song for him personally in his performances. This is how this goes. And by the way, this has that mambo syncopated left hand kind of feel that we talked about earlier. There's one other piano player I wanted to talk about today. Was a guy named, his name was James Booker, and he was kind of a tragic hero kind of a guy, because he passed away in his early 40s because he had all kinds of substance abuse problems and mental issues and all kinds of stuff. And they say, you know, there's always that discussion about someone that's a genius and being kind of borderline, a little crazy kind of thing. And Booker was kind of that type of person. And the reason why I really want to talk about him a little bit is because he passed away in the 80s and people are still talking about him. And the reason being is he kind of broke all the molds. And he never really was into the whole Professor Longhair, mambo, like Caribbean, Latin kind of groove thing. But he played all the different kind of feels of the traditional boogie woogie and blues piano, and he did it in a very unique way. And what really kind of it said about it is that we don't have to be locked into one kind of thing to have that New Orleans sound. We can kind of break all those molds apart and try to do things a little differently and still have that kind of sound. And Booker would do things where he would start one song and then he'd start quoting Beatles songs in the middle, and then he would start playing some Chopin, and you know, I mean, he would just travel around inside of songs so much that it all of a sudden made all the piano players really kind of think about what we're doing and kind of open up a lot of different things to that. So I want to do one song of his. This was there was a record called Classified, and this is the title cut called Classified. And there's some singing. I don't do any of the singing, but his style is definitely very unique, and he takes everything that he does, or everything that he did was a very traditional, rooted kind of thing, but it just had its own kind of twist. Like instead of playing a regular stride, like something like... That's kind of a square kind of a beat. Booker would do a stride, and it would be like this whole twisted up kind of thing, like something like this. It always had this kind of little bit of a bounce to it and a syncopation. What I mean by syncopation is something that doesn't always fall squarely like on the beat, like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's off of that kind of the whole Professor Longhair mambo feet. That's all off the beat and syncopated. That's what I mean by when I say syncopated. So anyway, I want to play a James Booker tune. This is called Classified. Thank you very much. That's James Booker. So I'm going to do one more song. I'm going to be over here. I got some CDs with me, or if you just want to come over and say hello or find out what's going on around town. I've got some appearances this weekend. Just come over and talk to me if you want to come on out and see some of them. And I always end my performances with a standard boogie woogie. This was kind of one of those controversial tunes that was sort of written by someone who didn't actually perform it, and there was some other people. Pretty much all the piano players from New Orleans have played it, Professor Longhair, Dr. John. And it was originally recorded by Ray Charles, and Ahmet Ertegun took the writing credit for it, who was his, who owned Atlantic Records and was the producer of everything. So it's called Mess Around. And thanks a lot for coming. Those that are checking in on the stream, thank you for checking in on the stream. And I'll see you out there. Okay? Thank you very much, y'all.
Joe Krown, everybody. Thank you. And thank you all for coming out on behalf of the New Orleans Jazz National Historical Park and the New Orleans Jazz Museum. You can follow both of us on Facebook. Check out our websites. We have lots and lots of great live programming here. And if you're not in town, you can catch a lot of it on our Facebook feed. So come back, see us again. I hope you all have a great day. Thank you, everybody.